Exactly 7 o'clock in the morning when the knock came. At first, I thought it was the neighbor's door. It was too early for visitors, too abrupt for delivery men. But the second knock came sharper, more insistent, and it rattled through my bones. I dragged myself to the door, still half dreaming, hair a mess, wearing an old t-shirt. And when I opened it, I saw her, my sister, standing there with a suitcase at her side. "I'll live here now," she announced, just like that. Not a request, not even a conversation starter. A declaration. She said it as if it had already been decided somewhere behind closed doors. And I was the last one to know. I blinked at her, disoriented. Before I could even shape a response, heard my mother's voice, sharp and smug, rising from the hallway like smoke. She stepped forward, her eyes glinting with that cold satisfaction I had grown up under. "We're doubling your rent to cover our expenses," she said. No smile, no softening, just that clipped tone of authority she always carried. The tone that once made me obey without thinking. For a split second, the world seemed to stop. They expected me to crumble, I realized. They expected me to do what I had always done: fold, accommodate, swallow my own needs for theirs. They wanted to see me panic, maybe beg, maybe bargain. They wanted that moment of satisfaction, of watching me bend like a branch in a storm. But something in me shifted instead. Of fear, I felt clarity settle over me, calm and cold as morning frost. I nodded slowly. "Then I'll move out," I said. The silence that followed was delicious, almost comical. My mother's lips parted slightly, as though she hadn't prepared for that possibility. My sister's painted mouth twisted, and then she laughed. Loud, mocking, as though I'd just told the funniest joke of my life. My mother joined in, the two of them standing there in my doorway, laughing in my face like I was the punchline of a cruel family joke. That was the last time they laughed. At me. What they never understood was that the apartment was never really a gift. It was a leash. My parents owned the building, a small complex of flats that they rented out. I had been living in one of those units since my early 20s, long past the age when most people would have fought for independence. At first, it had seemed like generosity. They called it helping me get on my feet. They called it keeping me close to family. But as years went by, I began to realize it was never about support. It was about control. Every month, I paid my rent on time, and yet they reminded me constantly that I was under their roof, their rules, their thumb. The truth was, I had built my life inside those four walls. I furnished the place myself, carefully, piece by piece. Saving up for a sofa, a proper dining table, decent appliances. I refinished the floors with my own money. I painted the walls in colors that made me feel calm. I turned what had been a bare, lifeless box into a home. And for years I told myself it was enough. If I stayed quiet, if I played along, maybe one day they would see me not as an extension of their bank account. Not as a servant, not as the shadow to my golden sister, but as my own person, but my sister. She had always been the chosen one. No job, no real direction, no accomplishments worth noting, but adored nonetheless. Where she failed, they excused. Where she faltered, they lifted her up. Every stumble was framed as charm, every mistake as a quirk. And me, where I succeeded, they diminished. Where I grew stronger, they grew harsher. Nothing I did was enough. Nothing I gave was truly appreciated. My role was set from the beginning. Provider, not child. Workhorse, not daughter. And that morning, when they stood there in my doorway smirking, delivering their ultimatum, double rent or accept my sister as a roommate, I realized something with startling clarity. This wasn't family. This was extortion. I should have been furious. I should have shouted, thrown their words back at them, demanded to know how they could be so cruel. But I didn't. Instead, I felt something else's stillness, a calm I hadn't felt in years. I looked at them both and simply said, "Fine, I'll move." They thought I was bluffing. I could see it in their eyes, the way my sister's smirk widened, the way my mother's gaze lingered on me with that air of superiority. They thought. They had me cornered. After all, where would I go? I was still tied to them financially, wasn't I? I had no leverage, no backup plan. That was their assumption. What they didn't know was that years ago, when the lease had been drawn up back, when they were careless, back when they never thought to look too closely at paperwork, I had insisted that every improvement, every fixture, every piece of furniture purchased with my money would be recorded in writing as mine. They thought it was a meaningless detail. They signed it without question, believing that no child would ever hold their parents accountable. They underestimated me. So when I said I was moving out, I meant it. Every last piece of it. The very next day, I made the call. Moving truck, 2 movers, all paid in cash. They arrived mid-morning, and together we began the work. We stripped the place bare, room by room. The sofa, the bed, the dining table all mine, the cabinets I had paid. To install, unscrewed carefully and loaded into the truck. The appliances, fridge, stove, washer, dryer, unplugged, unbolted, and carried away. The lighting fixtures I had chosen, the custom blinds I had hung all taken down. I left nothing behind but the dust of my labor, the ghost of what once had been a home by the time the movers were done. The apartment looked the way it had the very first day I'd signed the lease. Hollow, empty, unlivable. 4 walls and a floor. Nothing more. I wasn't finished yet. Before leaving, I pulled out my phone and made a series of quick calls. Electricity, canceled. Gas, canceled. Internet, gone. Water, shut off. Every account had been under my name. Every bill I had faithfully paid. All of it ended with a few clicks and confirmations. By the time I walked out of that door, the apartment was stripped, not just of furniture, but of life itself. I locked the door behind me, the key cold in my hand, and I slipped the envelope under it. Inside was the termination of the lease, effective, immediately. Along with it, a stack of invoices proving every improvement had been made from my pocket, every expense covered by me. And for good measure, the notices from the utility companies confirming the accounts had been closed. It was all there, written in black and white, undeniable. Hungwok. When my parents and sister returned later that evening, expecting to crown my sister queen of her new home, what they found was not triumph, but ruin. For bare walls. Silence. Emptiness. My mother's voice cracked first, rising in a pitch I had never heard from her. What happened here? She rushed from room to room, opening doors, flicking light switches that did nothing, staring at blank spaces where furniture had been. I stood in the center of the barren living room, arms folded, watching them. Calm, silent, present in a way I had never been before. My sister's jaw dropped, her face a mask of disbelief. But where's the furniture? I looked at her, my voice steady. Mine, all of it. Checked the receipts, held out a copy of the documents, but she didn't take them. She just stared, wide-eyed, like a child watching her sandcastle collapse under a wave. My father, slower to arrive, stepped inside last. He scanned the emptiness, his face turning a shade paler with every second. He took the envelope, rifled through the papers, his eyes moving quickly, his lips tightening. He understood exactly what it meant. Months, maybe years of repairs before they could rent it again. Money they didn't have. Disaster of their own making. Enjoy your new apartment, I said softly. It's exactly what you deserve. And then I walked. Out, without looking back.